how Kelvin came to the project as well.
Well, we had to pay Kelvin. You know, the Kelvin portion of the search was really very simple. We were all familiar with his work. You know, he's done so much illustrious work in movies prior to ours, but we really needed somebody who was going to go on that deep dive, do that immersion. It's really important for me that everybody who saw the movie tonight understands that Kelvin didn't just do the work of, you know, traditionally what an actor does. He had to represent and portray a virtuosic violinist, and everything that you see in that movie is Kelvin. And we needed someone who was going to do that. At the end of the day, we're trying to honor a real person, right? Part of what has motivated us all is that Joseph Bologna was in fact a real person. He was erased. Or there was a very serious attempt to erase this person from history, and we all got together and embarked on this journey to try and honor him. And in doing that and resurrecting him, we needed someone like Kelvin to really go that extra mile, and we're grateful that he was either foolhardy, you know, or generous enough in spirit to do that. And then once you have Kelvin, then you got to surround him with people of commensurate talent and commitment, and everyone that's on the stage that is a member of the cast and you know, falls into that category, that everyone just, you know, think of, you know, we talked about Kelvin, you know, violin, like Samara, Minnie, they have to portray credibly real opera singers, which I think they also pulled off immensely. And Lucy Boynton, like, you know, there's probably no more well-trafficked role in the history of cinema than Marie Antoinette, and yet Lucy Boynton managed to carve out a very specific iteration of that character that is unlike everyone I've ever seen before.
Before I turn it over to the audience, I do want to ask about the music aspect of it. For those of you that had to, you know, credibly portray musicians and the music in the film, maybe you can talk a little bit about that training process. Kelvin, Samara, Minnie, and Chris, and the composers.
It was hard. Finally can breathe now. Now listen, let me say something. My dad's a classical music teacher. He taught at university, and so I remember growing up seeing him teach these kids, and he would be like, it takes 6 months to teach them like one concerto. So when I told him, when Michael Abel sent me those first few, I was like, now y'all done lost y'all mind. Y'all think I'm gonna be able to play this. So my dad was like, all right, get to shedding. We went to the back house. We were sitting there for like 5 hours a day, long tones, long strokes, you know what I'm saying, getting it together. It was like 5, 6, almost 6 months plus during shooting of nonstop lessons just to get it together. And let me tell you something, when that movie was over, that violin never saw me again.
Insisted on what, long takes.
You were wild.
No doubles.
He was like, we're gonna steady cam it. I said, you know what? You lost your mind, Steve.
It's like how hard can it be?
Do you want me to win? And he was right. Honestly, I'm glad he pushed me, so.
Michael and Chris, did you want to speak a little bit about the music?
Well, and what about your fencing? Are you still fencing?
Yeah, that part too, you know what I'm saying? Like, also, let me tell you, I fractured my clavicle on this movie. The first couple of weeks, I was over there in the brace. They were looking at me like, is this movie gonna happen? We need to recast him? Does Will Smith need to come into this movie? And I was like, I don't know if y'all want that.
Well, Kelvin was an amazing sport about throwing himself into bringing up his violin to where you could really believe he was this character, and I had great fun using Joseph's music, but also some other riffs that just really showed what an incredible virtuoso kind of rock star that he really was. And you pulled that off completely. So this film was I'm a person who has heard of Joseph Bologna and has felt like I was following in his footsteps in some way. So to get a chance to be able to help tell his story is a dream come true for me.
Yes, here.
First off, this was so amazing. This perfect for all. But my question is for you. When you're looking for, I always know this one. When you're looking for screenplays to direct, how do you pick?
When you're looking for screenplays to direct, how do you pick them?
You know, that's a really good question. There are some of my reps here, and I bet they have the same question. It's just, you know, it's partly, mostly it's just how you feel and whether you have a personal connection to the material. And you know, as I said in the intro, I was blessed with Stephanie's script. I mean, she is a brilliant writer, and literally from the first scene, my heart sunk because I was like, I gotta do this movie. Followed very shortly thereafter by, oh shit, now I gotta do this movie. But really, it's just that. At the end of the day, you know, making a movie is a long thing. I mean, we've been on this 2 years, right? I mean, you wrote it when you were, you know, a high schooler. So you've been on it for a lot longer than anybody else on this stage. But the actual kind of development, script development, you know, pre-production, everything is 2 years. And I would just say to you that, I don't know if you were asking that question because, you know, you're in this crazy line of work and you're, okay, so here's what I would say to you, unsolicited, is your connection to the material has to be so potent and so strong that it will sustain you over 2 years. You can't wake up 4 months into it going, what the hell was I thinking when I signed on to do this movie? This movie has to be something that regenerates interest and commitment and passion every time you know, confront it. And so if you don't have that, then do a TV gig because you'll be in and out in 3 weeks.
I want to quickly go back to Lucy, Minnie, and Samara, you know, and talk a little bit about the opera singing, but then also how you fleshed out your characters. I mean, this is Joseph's story, but you also play pivotal roles in relationship with him. So can you discuss that a little bit?
Hey, okay. I mean, look, they're real women, so that was daunting, but also really inspiring because you were in these real period. It started with the wardrobe for me. I think it was so restricting, and like there's literally a garment that goes under your skirts called a cage, and that's what I felt Marie Josephine was. I think she was like a singing bird in a cage. Just no rights, no choice. I mean, it sucks that they're taking that away now again. But yeah, I mean, oh gosh, what was my train of thought? I don't even know. Was it good? I was on a roll and then I stopped.
Birds in a cage.
Birds in a cage. Yeah, just being in a, you know, being sold, like your dad kind of owning every autonomy you have and then being kind of sold off to a husband and then him having the same sort of power over you. And I think seeing her freedom in music with Chevalier and then that being snatched away was just really what drew me to her arc. And then working with all these wonderful people was a cherry on top. What was the question? I don't know. Lucy, you take over because I'm nervous now.
Hi, equally nervous. I guess I had a different experience because there's such an extensive amount of information out there about Marie Antoinette. a lot of it is delivered through quite a myopic channel, and I keep saying it, but I think it's true that it reminds us that history has an author and a very specific voice of that author, and so it was a great experience to kind of try and put that all away and dispose of my kind of pre-existing ideas of her and start from scratch. And then from there, also, as you were saying, it's Joseph's story, and so try and find the avenue of her that is, as Stephen was saying, that is true, but is a tool for this story. And I think she's a useful tool in this because she is the voice of so many people that we're hearing a very similar rhetoric from, especially in the last few years, but I think generally, where it's a kind of fear-generated feeling of clutching to what you know and so desperate to keep the status quo as is, as was safe for you, that your view of everything becomes so much more enclosed and myopic, and it's not that you can't see the bigger picture, it's that you won't. And that dialogue just so, I think, specifically spoke to that. It was such a kind of, I think it's one of those things where it's such a relief to read that phrase so eloquently, and get to kind of put the ugliness of that out there. And that's what I loved exploring and kind of pushing further, the ugliness and remorselessness of convenient allyship. And that was something Stephen and I spoke about from the very beginning, absolutely. And when it's articulated in such a precise, nuanced, and eloquent way that is not heavy-handed, it is just truthful from Stephanie's words. It is just an absolute relief, I think.
I was the villain. I was bad. But there's something, you have to see the calcification, you know. Also, Marie Antoinette gets a way worse rap than Napoleon. Napoleon was the real arse. He was the one that got rid of all of his music. He reinstated slavery. Yeah, no, the reinstating slavery in the French colonies in 1802, like that. He excised Joseph's music from our history, but I guess he didn't get rid of all of it, because here it is. But I think it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see the freedom and the creativity that you brought to it, Kelvin, and then this weird calcification of like Marie Antoinette loving him as a friend, but her duty, and then me just being dreadful and you being a bird in a cage. Absolute nightmare. Well done.
This Q&A went by far